No foul, loose ball. Morgan, Hoiberg's got it. Morgan, a Sejan, 25-footer. Got it! Got it! Got it! Got it! Tie game, 52-52.
Day by day, we get better and better. So we can't beat beat. Won't beat.
Hey, welcome to Day by Day. I'm James, and I'm with Andrew. Fresh off a Crown Championship. Andrew, how are you feeling, man?
Feeling good. Yeah.
Feels good to win something, right?
It feels good, and it's wild that it's April 8th, and like Nebraska basketball is still fresh in our minds.
I know.
Like on a good,
right.
So
we're going to talk about it because I think it's a significant step for Nebraska basketball. We got I want to talk a little bit of roster stuff.
Yeah.
We got football going on. Baseball just beat Kansas tonight. We don't have to talk about that too much, but Kansas was ranked. There's a lot of sports going on, even in April.
A rare midweek win for Husker baseball.
A rare midweek win against a ranked foe. Oh. If only every team they played was ranked, they'd win. All right. Well, we'll get into all that and more. You can find us on characterchronicles.com, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Please subscribe, like, comment. Helps more people find the show. We appreciate you, especially those of you who interact a little bit on YouTube in the comments. We're thankful for interacting. Thanks for watching and tuning in. All right, so let's get started here with the Crown. Man, that was a fun tournament to watch.
It was. Yeah, right? A fun week, like a long week, but yeah, it was a blast.
I watched parts of some of the other games, so I don't know what the crowds were like. It felt like that Hawaii tournament where it's like, okay, there's maybe 500 people there.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of Nebraska fans, at least for the championship game. But I just loved the whole vibe around it. I love that Fox had their top crews doing the games. I thought the broadcast quality was great. Felt like a big time tournament as you were watching it on television. It was just like this fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Well, and speaking of did you see today some of the numbers came out on the?
It was almost 900,000, right, to watch the game.
Yeah, I think they said 62% more viewers than the NIT had, or something. So you talk about kind of killing some of these old, on these old tournaments that.
Yep.
Yeah, you think it's got another shot next year, so.
I hope so. And I love the money aspect, right? I love that they're giving away money. I mean, they get so much advertising income, it's only right that you, I think, reward the teams that play. Well, there was a lot of going around on Twitter kind of making fun of Nebraska. I don't know about other teams. Of course, I just see Nebraska stuff. My thought is just like, man, if you're not going to make it to the NCAA tournament, but you're going to play in a tournament, you might as well win it, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't go in it to lose. They would gain nothing by losing. And I wrote an article a couple weeks ago, like, would it change our minds if Nebraska won this? And a part of me then was like, no, but after they won it, maybe my mind did change a little bit on the team this year. I'm curious what you think, if you feel the same way you did 3-4 weeks ago when they lost to Iowa to end the season, or if you feel differently.
Okay, so you got to bear with me and let me. I texted you earlier today. I got to get up on a soapbox a little bit.
I want to do it. That's where we're going.
I'm this is the optimist in me, but I've been boiling a little bit. So some of Twitter, some of local media, Husker radio we listen to, have just sort of, there's been a little bit of like, oh yeah, this is good for the players, blah, blah, blah. But I'm hearing a lot of narrative. And it's kind of about fans, I feel like, that we should just be careful not to get too excited. Be careful not to enjoy this or too much, or think it means something big here. But to your question, in my mind, would you rather just end the season after losing to Iowa at home and just have, nothing, or come into something like this? And so, there's this narrative that's like, don't take it too far, and I'm thinking like, I get that from a player coach standpoint. Like if the coaches are satisfied with this, that's a problem. Like you don't want the coach to be like, this is the top. This is what, this was everything we were shooting for. But as fans, I guess speaking more as fans, Twitter's been a blast. You've been in the thick of it with memes and comments and stuff. And you got guys getting, whether it's AI or real tattoos of the crap. I'm after
Who
the
knows?
But
nobody knows.
But yeah, no, I just kind of, it's like celebrating and being excited about this is, it's not, there two things can be true at once. You can want more, you can want a tournament, and then you can also just relish this, especially as fans, when we've just dealt with so much like gut punches for some years. It's like, you don't want apathy from a fan base either. So if something like this keeps that apathy away, then it's a great.
I think that's the key, because here's the question. Let's relate it to football. If Nebraska doesn't make the Pinstripe Bowl, and if they don't win, how do you feel about the football season?
Exactly.
Football team going into next season? That game meant nothing, right? Like in the grand scheme of college football, that game meant absolutely nothing. But to us and to the program, it meant everything. It was a consolation game, and that's what the Crown is. It's a consolation tournament. That's all it is. Consolation, right? To console. That's the whole point of the tournament, is to console a fan base and a program to help them move forward after a disappointing season. So I was thrilled, but I was thrilled with how Nebraska played, even though most of the production came from guys who won't be here next year, like, Bryce and Juwan, and heck, even Braxton Mia had a couple decent games thrown in there, right? So like, you're not going to see those guys next year, but I think we feel very differently about 25-26 if Nebraska doesn't play in this tournament.
Yeah.
I think we feel differently about Fred. So that gets to my next question. How do you feel about Fred going into this next season?
I feel, because I think a lot of the questioning could, towards Fred during this very streaky year that we had, you get into these 5-game losing streaks and whatnot, is you can question what the coaching decisions, or whether or not he has control of the locker room, or what. This is a big evidence that the guy can coach. We know that. We've seen him in situations ball, and but also rally that team and keep guys cohesive and locked onto a goal.
Yep.
Even though that goal is in the media's eyes, it's worth nothing, but to the players, obviously it's worth quite a bit. So you also see him up there having fun, hat on backwards, and he's in the middle of recruiting, trying to get transfers. And so I think the optics of it are great. I think being, playing on what some would argue a better time slot on Sunday for this championship than the national championship on Monday, like, yes, we didn't get enough people tuning in, but a lot did. And it's unfortunate it didn't make front page ESPN headlines, but it definitely, it's a good thing. It's fun to see. And you hope that the recruiting comes out of it. So I just think, it's like, why does he even have to define the next season? Like, yes, like it'd be different if we had a lot of returning players and they got this tournament experience. But one thing like Juwan Gary said in his presser was like something about joy. He's like, we're out there just playing with joy. And it's like, isn't that the point? Like, these guys left, a tough win a tough loss to Iowa and a lost streak to making money, having joy, final go around with their teammates. So to me, stop poo-pooing it. It means a lot to the players, to the coaches, to the fan base.
I mean, there's this like legitimate question I have to ask, not to you specifically, but just to us. Is there a part of us, and are there parts of us that genuinely do not want Husker athletics to succeed? Like, do you think there's especially a segment of the fan base? Because we know these people, right? Like, we all have these friends in life, and God love them. right? Where they are negative about everything and nothing can be good enough.
Yeah.
And it's like they want the world to go to hell in a handbasket just so that they have something to complain about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean, like I'm psychoanalyzing a little bit, right? Somebody like that feels like I have some control and power because I can complain.
Yeah.
And tell everybody how things ought to be. And I legitimately think there's a segment, every fan base, but especially Nebraska sports, and then very narrowly Nebraska basketball, that does not want Nebraska basketball to succeed.
Right.
I don't think they would know how to handle it.
Yeah.
But I also think they're just bent that way to want something to go wrong. And you see it. I mean, you see it on social media. I don't know if I catch it as much in person with people I talk to, but certainly on Twitter, where I just think people do not want this team, this program to do well. They want them to be a basement dwelling basketball team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it to a degree. I mean, look at some of our highest viewed videos this last year for football were after losses because
100%.
It's clickbaity, you know. Let's listen to people rant, and I think even as a
misery loves company.
Yeah, and even myself, we go through those tough stretches with Frost, and things get so bad that it almost you can comfort yourself by just this is terrible, fire everybody. I wonder who our next coach is going to be. I wonder, and that gets a little addicting because
it does.
That's more exciting than watching them just suck. So, yeah, we definitely can create those situations in our own minds and the media. I mean, we know that. Like
we do.
We know where the money is sometimes.
I mean, I'm not going to mention names, but I think there's a few media members who do not want Nebraska. I would say Nebraska men's sports to do well. And it's really weird because they're so celebratory, congratulatory to the women's teams. And so there's a weird dynamic there.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, you might be able to know who I'm talking about, but I think there's a segment of media who are like, yeah, and I get that media is supposed to be neutral, but there's a difference between being neutral and objective and be able to, call it as you see it.
Yeah.
There's a difference between that and, like you said, like poo-pooing everything. Like if there's a sign of growth, if there's a sign of taking the next step, like, man, water that seed, man, and just let it grow. And then if the team doesn't come through, okay, now we look back and we can analyze it. But I think even as we've been doing this podcast, like I'm learning, you really only can give a commentary, a referendum on a team. It's got to be after the season, right? Yeah. Like we love to do, again, hot takes, clickbait. Let's talk about right now. You can't do that in the middle of a season.
Yeah.
You can't do that after a game. You can't do it at halftime. I mean, Andrew, there are times when there are people on Twitter who are at halftime. They're like, fire him now. And I'm like, what? Like, what?
Especially this.
Like, what?
Yeah,
like, I am so glad that you are not the athletic director. Yeah. It would be carnage.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much of like, you want it both ways sometimes too. So I've heard in the last few days a lot about this team and saying, basically, this team just wasn't that good. They, so there was some debate about, okay, well, are they like, were they really close? Were they a bubble team? Were they a tourney team? Or were they just so far off from that? And really, I mean, and I said this on X2, it's like one or two more wins were in the Big Ten tourney. And the way this team plays in tournament settings, like you never know what could have happened. We might be having a different conversation right now, but at the same time, it's like this team was not good. They need to get better, blah, blah, blah. And then you have, well, to get to the level of this team, they have so much work to do next year because, it's like, were we good or not? Like you're saying, like next year's like, you're already poo-pooing next year because there's no way you can match this team, but you're saying the team wasn't that good. So to me, it's everything goes out the window in the off season. You add transfers, you add a little bit of a coaching staff shakeup, so we already
So
see what they've added, and it can definitely turn around in a hurry, especially in today's portal era. So
at 7:42 tonight, I had a short thread on Twitter. I can't call it X, man. I just can't. I can't call it X, Twitter. So I had just 3 posts in a thread on Nebraska's roster for next year. Who's coming in, who's likely returning, and then who's questionable for me.
Yeah.
So we know Lawrence is in, Sanford's in, Jaravicius, if that's how you say his last name. I'm going to learn that probably better. And then Quentin Rhymes is coming in as a freshman. And then for those who were returning, I had Jacobson, Grace, Frager, Burt, Bolus, Hoiberg, Essegian, Mast, and Janowski. And then I had Burke as questionable, mostly because I just said, we know a lot of times when guys come back from an injury, they're often looking for a fresh start. We see that in football all the time. And so just questionable for me. I think he would do really well if he's, stuck it out with Hoiberg and he got a full year of development. So obviously their biggest holes are kind of a power forward enforcer type, somebody like Josiah Alec, but better on the offensive end. What I love is Fred's putting together a roster of guys who can shoot, from the 3 transfers he just brought in. But I posted this at 7:42, and at about 8:30, did you see that they announced that Nick Janowski is entering the transfer portal?
No.
So yes. So you're getting this live and raw. You don't know this, and I've known it for a couple hours now. So obviously we know our friend Mike was really big on Nick because Nick was in Wisconsin. Mike kind of followed him. I saw Mike's tweet, which was just an N with about 30 O's behind it. So I'm a little surprised because I thought Janowski would be really fitting into the rotation next year, but it makes me wonder a couple things. One, did his development not take off? Actually, it makes me think 3 things. One, was his development a little slower than Fred and the staff anticipated?
Yeah.
Does he want to play or start somewhere else? And he knows he could do that maybe at a mid-major group of whatever they call them in basketball, group of 5. I don't think that's what they call them in basketball. And then 3, it makes me wonder, is there somebody that they're bringing in that he knows would take his minutes?
Because they're not in the portal. In fact, I saw a headline earlier tonight, a top 20 power forward
saw that
had Zoom calls with Villanova and us today. So they're going to swing. They're going to swing big. I think they've hit pretty. I mean, obviously bringing Lawrence, you know what you're getting with him, and Sanford, you know what you're getting. And then you bring in a first team all MAC player. Right now it feels like they're hitting big on these, but they're going to swing.
Agree.
So
now, who do you think would play point guard next year? I'm convinced Lawrence could do it, especially with Rink on the floor and having him as a point center. I think, again, we talked about this on other episodes. Rink added so much to last year's team. I don't think we appreciated it until this year. I don't think you need to have John Stockton on your team or a Chris Paul on your team when you have a Rink Mast.
Yeah.
A big who can facilitate from the top of the key. But I think Jamarcus could play the point guard. I had some people say, no, he's not. He'll turn the ball over too much. Maybe that's the case, but I'm curious if they would go after a point guard.
Is this, well, yeah, you got a true freshman coming in. That Grimes, what position is he? Is he point?
Rhymes. Yeah, no, he's a small forward.
Okay.
So I would imagine, he's 6'6", so he's about Gary's size, not in terms of build. He's got some weight he needs to put on, but
I think Lawrence, if you bring back, I think Sam Hoiberg is going to continue to develop. The guy he's just solid. Now, whether he's a true point or not, he's not really a facilitator, but he's good with the ball. I think it's serviceable. You have Lawrence, you have Sam, and then Jacobson. Even I don't.
I mean, think about how many times last year you saw them. They ran their offense through Rink.
Yes,
and I'd be shocked if they didn't do that next year, right? But like, look at the guys who can shoot. You mean you could have Lawrence, Sanford, Jaravicius, Esijan, and Mast on the floor all at one time. That's five guys.
All five.
Shoot.
Yep.
Which they didn't have this year.
Yeah. We were watching. My wife and I were watching, and my wife kept getting so annoyed that Burke would get the ball at the top of the key, and people are giving him 6-7 feet. And you could just tell. She's like, "Why doesn't he shoot it?" And I said, I think the coaches had said this is your role. He's going to play the pick and roll at the top there. But if that's Mast is going to go off the top. So I really think you sort of have that half court point guard, I guess, in a Rink Mast. So
I like it. I'm looking forward to seeing those guys on the court together. Just to remind everybody, the transfer portal period works a little bit differently than in football. There's no semester to catch right now, right? It's April. The semester doesn't end until June. So these guys are, May, June, I think it's their quarters. That's usually West Coast schools. But so they don't have to end their semester and then transfer in a new one like they do over Christmas break, right? Mm-hmm. So if you remember from last year, Andrew, the first guy we picked up in the portal, I think, was Andrew Morgan, and that was like April 17th or 18th. Yeah. And so this will play out for a long time, several weeks, if not a couple months. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Yep. And I'm not worried if they don't act fast. I think they just got to get it right. You got to get the right guys.
And I'm sorry, correction. It wasn't Burke taking the ball at the top. It was Morgan, who I think is Morgan. Your comp to Mast, except he doesn't. Mast is going to knock down the threes. So you're right. Morgan was that first pickup, and he had a decent year, but he wasn't a game changer by any means. So
did you ever hear about Morgan being a soybean farmer?
Yeah, his dad has a farm.
Have you heard about that? Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I was the only one who heard that.
And did you know Bryce's dad played for the Hornets, I think, and
oh, no way,
passed away of a kidney disease. So
geez, I didn't know that.
Those two narratives.
Did you also know that Nebraska was playing for a $300,000 bag?
Yep.
At the Crown.
You're the bag.
Yeah, a big bag. I liked
the broadcast, but it was kind of felt a little bit like stick to football there.
That's the thing, is like there were times where I was like, Gus, I don't think you know what to talk about right now. Because then they'd show Dylan Raiola and he's like, all those Huskers, and I'm like, Gus, we know you just want to be in the football booth. That's where you want to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, congratulations to Nebraska, crown champions. We are proud of you. And yes, as alums, think about, Andrew, where we used to, we'd be standing at the Devaney getting crushed by Kansas and Oklahoma State and Oklahoma and Missouri. And we have been through the ringer.
Yeah.
And so I don't think, even if you've been a Nebraska fan, and even if you are an alum and you just, again, you're kind of poo-pooing on this, like think about, there have only been 3 times in Nebraska basketball history that they've won 20 games in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah.
And these two were one of them.
Yep. Yeah.
Fred Hoiberg in these 2 seasons has 44 wins. That's the second most ever over a two-year stretch in Nebraska history.
A guy that had to take a pay cut 3 years ago.
So
and was on a very, very hot seat. So
right.
Yep.
And I know that years can really like seasons can take off, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, we're in the Sweet 16. And that just hasn't happened for Nebraska. But our history has nothing to commend to itself. Yep. Like we have no basketball pedigree whatsoever, except for a few good years in the 90s. And we still didn't do what we wanted them to do. So,
and if you're out there watching this conversation, our enjoyment of this week does not mean that we do not want to go to an NCAA tournament. Does not mean that we would rather win the crown than win a game in the NCAA tournament. I heard so much of that this week that it's like, I think as fans, like there's a lot of satire, a lot of fun that was had.
With so much banter
and banter. And I heard some media people really take that seriously and be like, it's crazy that people would think that it's a big deal that Nebraska's, one of 4 teams playing in April. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of just tongue in cheek fun.
Yeah.
We don't actually think that's a huge achievement, but hey, it's fun to be able to say it, right? It's fun to be able to say
it is.
We're the only school to ever win the crown.
Yep.
Tournament. So,
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like giving Creighton and Iowa crap that we're playing and you're not.
Yeah.
the map. I've seen people put the map of the United States and Nebraska's highlighted red, and it says states in red, or the only states that have won the Crown basketball tournament in red, and it's just us. Like all that kind of, it's just stupid. It's sports.
It is.
It's just dumb fun.
Yeah.
But it's fun. And I think what you pointed out, like what you saw on Gary's face and Asijan and Bryce's face when they're sitting at the podium was, man, these are just guys who are having fun.
Yeah.
Right. And
I was say, not to mention Bryce and Gary, oh, I'm sorry, you're cutting out.
Yep. I was just going to say, like Monday morning, the next morning, like Bryce and Jawan are waking up and they're like, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. And, we talk about, okay, they're professional athletes because they make money and a lot's demanded of them. Yes. But no, because they didn't choose to retire. With college athletes, there's a shelf life. And if you've been to college, it's just so unique. It's so special. And that ended for them.
Yeah.
That's why when Jawan left the floor against Iowa, he's crying. And those guys, props to the guys with Iowa who were hugging him and saying, hey, good game, good career. Like it means something to them, right? In the NBA, you get to decide usually, you get to decide, I'm done. I'm either not going back or I'm going to retire or I'll go play overseas. But you don't just say like, okay, yeah, 3 years and then you graduate and you're done. You're not welcome back anymore. But that's what college sports is. That's what makes it so special, because it's such a short period of time. When these guys, they start out as young men, boys, and they leave as men, and they figure out a little bit more about themselves. They feel more comfortable in their skin. They're like, now I'm going to go out and, figure out my life, take the world by the horns. It's like, this is a short period of time and it's special. And now for those guys, it's over.
Well, and Jawan and Bryce, just another positive coming out of a tournament like this is they put a heck of a lot of film out there for scouts.
They did.
We know Bryce is going to get a shot in the NBA, I think. I don't know about Gary, but at least overseas somewhere making some money.
Yep.
So both guys averaging 20 and, I think it was 21 for Gary and 20 some for Bryce in this tournament. That can go a long way too when other guys are sitting at home not playing. So I think we had a lot of fun this week, probably more fun than Creighton and Iowa fans had.
I agree.
Creighton made the tournament, but what did they have to cheer for this week? I don't know. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but it was a fun week.
Hey man, Nebraska basketball won 4 games this week.
Yep.
Think about that. Amazing. Okay, let's turn the page. We'll probably talk transfer portal as the weeks go by. At our last episode, we did say we would have this list of 10 programs that had the most to prove. I promised you we would do it. We're not doing it. We can break promises because it's our show. We've just talked for 30 minutes about Husker basketball.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll get to that at some point this spring or summer. But we wanted to react a little bit to spring practice, press conferences today, and then we'll get out of here. So what are your thoughts? You listened to more than I did. I heard a little bit of Satterfield, a little bit of Hoiberg. I know you listened to Rhule. How how are you feeling now entering second week of spring practice?
Yeah. Well, you know what's crazy about late season basketball success is it makes you kind of ignore all the spring football stuff.
It does. It does.
It's just like, oh yeah, we got football going on.
I've been so invested in basketball that I'm like, I don't have the time for football.
Yeah. Or if we had a poll, it'd be like, is Nebraska now a basketball school instead of football?
Yeah.
No,
it is in April.
I did watch. Yeah, I watched most of Rhule's. I think, and we talked about it last episode too, a little bit of just he's got this demeanor that things are pretty calm. I think he's pretty buttoned up too on expectations, and it sounds like they've really limited a lot of media access and things like that. Obviously, not having a spring game, but he seemed positive, and it really feels like he's that CEO letting all these other people sort of run the show, and he's got seasoned vets running the show. And he even made a comment, it's kind of not my team anymore. It's our team. He made a comment that it's really a player run team.
That's really interesting.
So he seems really comfortable. He said, somebody asked like kind of expectations wise. He said, I think we have a good team. He goes, I'm not going to say we're over here or over here, but he goes, like, we got a returning quarterback, which is huge. We got a lot of physical players. We got experienced transfers. So, he didn't have anything groundbreaking to say, but
which is not bad.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch Rhule, and he always throws in some nuggets of wisdom. So
let's talk about Satterfield, because I did listen to some of what he said or read it, and I just found it really fascinating because he kind of gave a window into his experience of being demoted and yet staying with the team. So did you read any of his stuff? Did you listen?
Yeah, I listened and
okay.
Thought saying like what.
So I read it. I'm curious how you felt about it as you're listening to him talk about it.
He seems kind of uncomfortable up there, and I'm sure it was an uncomfortable situation because last time I think he was on that stage, he had a kind of a gaffe with the whole yards
4 to 6.
Yeah. And then I'm sure there's a hit to your pride, with stepping up there and being in that different role, but I really appreciated him just saying, I love this place. I wanted to finish what I came here for. I want to see this thing succeed. And then really cool to hear Heinrich talk about the parallels between what they kind of they're both of them. But yeah, he looked uncomfortable to a degree, but I don't think that's just who he is, I think, in front of the media. But props to him for standing up there and addressing it. So
I found it very insightful that he said, I am having the most fun I've ever had coaching right now. I just think that's a window into the reality that, man, you know what? Some people are not meant to be the head guy, and that's okay. Some people are a better 2 or 3 or 4. And that's okay.
Yeah.
We see coordinators all the time who are amazing coordinators, and then they try to be a head coach and it just doesn't work. I don't know if we've ever had that situation here at Nebraska, but obviously with Scott Frost we have.
Yeah.
So that happens a lot. Or vice versa. There's guys who are great head coaches. You know what? It's like they actually are not good X's and O's people, but they're great at building culture. They're great at the big picture. And so it's like everybody has a role. Figure out what your strength is. And so I just thought that was so cool that he's like, he had been an offensive coordinator before. It hadn't gone well there either.
Yeah. He had been a coach before.
That's true.
Small school. So
that's true. So maybe he's even just starting to figure out, like, man, what am I gifted at? What are my strengths? Yeah. Where am I thriving? Or where would I thrive? And hopefully he's finding that in the tight end room. Man, I hope our tight end room just crushes it.
Oh, yeah, I think it's another telling sign too of Matt Rhule's culture and Matt Rhule as a leader as well, because when Holgerson was hired, and it's also a lesson to all of us to not jump to conclusions, but the media was like, there's no way Sat stays. That's going to be awkward. What's that going to be like walking in every day? And we just jump to these conclusions that, like, we kind of assume the worst in people sometimes. And now you got this guy standing up there and he's like, he stayed and he's loving and he's working with the I mean, just his character is that speaks a lot. He's working with the guy that came in and took his job and seems to be gracious to do it. And that's all you could ever want. So props to Matt Rhule on obviously understanding the character of the guys he's hiring and then giving them shots, even or seeing the spots that, I think Foley's around too. I saw in the offseason during Matt drill, like Foley's out there with players. I don't know what his role position is, but speaks a lot to Matt Rhule that guys want to stick around him. So,
I mean, that's probably true for most of life, right? Like we know the cliche, people don't leave jobs because of the work. They leave it because of people or because of who they work for. It's probably different in sports. I've never been a coach. I don't know what it's like. You leave for a lot of reasons. You want to run your own program. You want more money. You don't like, whatever. I don't know. But at the end of the day, if Sat's like, I really like working for Matt Rhule, and Matt Rhule is going to keep you on staff or he has a role for you, you take it, right? Again, like life is about relationships. And when you treasure certain relationships, you don't just give them up because something didn't go your way. I thought that was interesting too. He said, we talk about adversity a lot.
Yes.
And what happened to me is not any different than a guy getting benched. And I was like, man, like what a humbling experience.
Yeah.
But, I want to be the kind of person. So this is going to sound really funny, but like, I want to be like Marcus Satterfield.
Right.
I want to be the kind of person who, when something doesn't go my way, I don't pout and I don't pick up my ball and say, I'm going home. But I say, hey, how can I learn from this? How can I grow? How can I become better? What do I need to do to become better? And that's what I see him doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really interesting to kind of get on that same level as players. And as you were talking, one thing, money came to mind for me. And I think a lot of people, we joked about, highest paid tight end, if he kept that same structured contract that he had OC. At the same time, he may not make that much more than some of his players now. That's a very interesting dynamic too, where they really are. I mean, yes, it's coach, it's authority figure over player, but in a lot of ways, he really put that picture that we're kind of all one and the same here. In a lot of ways. So interesting.
Any thoughts on Hoiberg and what your gut might be about where he fits in the lineup? I know Holgerson made an interesting comment a couple weeks ago, said it's kind of a work in progress, but I mean, he's going to play, right? Like they're going to figure out how to get him on the field. This is his last hurrah, last go around.
Man, he might be the story that I'm most excited to see this year, I think. And more just so because I want to see him. He deserves it, He might be also a guy that's not going to flash in practice fully. I think he's just we saw that at quarterback. Like you couldn't tell me this, in practice or throwing on air or whatever, that he was the most impressive. But when he got in those games, Matt Rhule's first year, some of those explosive runs, he's physical. I think he wants to go and hit guys. I'm just, I don't, whatever they talk about in practice, like you said, he's going to play. And I think he's going to be impactful. So very excited about him.
Wouldn't be surprised to see him on special teams, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about where he would be, probably on the lines at some point. On like punt return, not punt returns, but punt coverage. Definitely see that. Yeah. Maybe he even at some point plays gunner. I don't know. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys on the team.
Yeah. You can. He's a weapon, and his speed and his size. Who knows how he can catch a ball, but just get the ball in his hands. He's gonna make people pay.
Again, he played really well in the bowl game. I know it was basic for him, but he's a good athlete. And we heard Rhule say so much. Oh, he's one of the best athletes on the team. One of the best athletes on the team. Well, you know what? You get your best athletes on the field. You just can't. You just can't keep saying that and then say, well, he's our second string quarterback.
Yeah.
So he's going to sit. Well, get him on the field. So I'm glad that they're doing that, and I hope that they do. It sounds like Carter Nelson's going to be back in the fall, or maybe even late summer at some point. Yeah, that's good.
Said 238, I think is what he weighs. So
it'll be great to see him.
Yep.
With Hoiberg, Lindenmeyer. I don't really know much about the guy from LSU who transferred. Markway. Is he got hurt, right? He needed surgery. Like, what's his story? Do you know anything about where he's at?
Well, yeah, he walked on. He didn't visit. I don't think he visited any other school. He just showed up on campus last year. I think somebody asked Sat that. They said, "What did you see out of him that makes you or gives you assurance of how you can use him?" And he goes, "We didn't see anything. He had 4 practices, then he got hurt." So I think he spoke to his his character, leadership. He's good to have in the room, all of that.
Yep.
I don't know what we know about him talent wise. I think you look at his film from LSU, and I mean SEC football, high level SEC football. So if he gets healthy, they'll be able to use him. So
we have 3 tight ends. And Mac Markway.
However, we have like a Bonner, and Matt Rhule also talked about he spoke mostly about defense being positionless, but I think there's ways that there's
an element to that on offense,
positionless as well. So
yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other thoughts from press conference day?
No, I need to watch more of the sights and sounds. Watch guys go against nobody and get excited about it. But we did lose a receiver this week. That was
hardly knew him.
Somewhat interesting.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, I haven't heard that before.
Stupid. So dumb. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What were your favorite moments of the Hardly Gilmore tenure at Nebraska?
There was like a brief moment where people were talking about him being a starter, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
did he have? Was there even a picture of him in Husker gear posted?
I think there was. Yeah, I think there was.
Okay.
It's number 14.
Yeah. Well, in all seriousness, we wish him the best. Obviously, something is off, and that kind of stuff happens. And I saw some people like, "Oh, every year." Well, you know what? That happens every program.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know how many guys? Like, again, think about it. They still have like what? Where are they at? 123, 128?
Right.
I don't know the number.
Yeah.
Think about think about managing that many people and staff and your support staff. Like, this is a significantly large organization that's being run, and everybody's an individual and they make individual choices. And sometimes things don't go the way that you want. And you just have to say, hey, this is not working out. It happens.
And it's not like we were counting on, it's not like we're in dire straits now, like at the receiver level. I mean, it makes some younger guys have to step up. Now he was young, very young too, but from what I've heard is Mosey's playing really well, or Mosey's got a lot of, promise. You got Bell back. Bonner's kind of your Swiss Army knife. And then the two big names, Hunter and
they'll be okay. They'll be more than okay. Yeah. One loss doesn't hurt them. It's going to be fine. Don't freak out. Please don't freak out when somebody is dismissed from the team. Yeah.
And there will be more.
There will be more.
People will be transferring.
That's the thing. By August, you're going to see another 20 to 30 guys not on the team.
Yep.
It is what it is. But, well, we're just a couple weeks away from Husker games. Again, I'll be there. I'm excited to see. They're doing flag football. They're doing women's flag football, skills competition. I'm trying to figure out how they're going to fit all this into a 2-hour, because I think it's like 2 hours.
It's like an all-day fest.
Yeah. If it's all, holy cow. I won't be there all day. It starts at 2 on Saturday. I think it's April 26th. So I don't know if there's tickets still available, but you can check.
I heard something about former players competing. Do you know what that's about?
I heard that as well. I think that might be part of the flag football or the skills competition. Nice. So I would imagine skills. Maybe you don't want older guys doing flag and hurting themselves, but yeah. So
fun.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there unless you got anything else.
No.
All right. Okay, well, let's celebrate the Crown win this week. We'll get into the transfer portal talk in the weeks to come. Hopefully baseball keeps cruising. I shouldn't say keeps cruising. They beat a ranked team, and now they play Iowa this weekend. So let's get a win, maybe even sweep the Hawkeyes. We'll see how they do.
Yeah.
Maybe they can get on a roll. So, all right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. Again, like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends, tell your mom about the show. She can even subscribe. She doesn't even have to watch.
Right.
But it'll always help people find us. So, as always, go Big Red. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.